I had a very funny conversation this morning when I went to my favorite Cuban coffee shop to grab a cold coffee. Usually when I arrive at the same time that I do every morning, there is a gaggle of cops, which makes me pretty uncomfortable. I don't like to be around the police, and that's how I feel. But this morning, one cop was particularly aggressive towards me in terms of communication, not in a brutal way, just in an annoying man way. So he was really poking at me and looking for some attention, even though I clearly had not had my coffee and it was 7 a.m. And some of his other cop buddies told him to knock it off because obviously I hadn't had my coffee. But I did take this as an opportunity to engage with them, whereas usually I would never, because I had an incident happen with City Bike in Miami, and I really love City Bike. One of my favorite things about Miami is being able to have access to the public bike system, and it brings me a lot of joy to use the city bikes. But recently, a bike was stolen on my account, and when I called in to inquire about what had happened, because I didn't understand how the bike was stolen and that I was accountable for it, when I called into City Bike, they told me that the only thing I could do in order to circumvent the fees or the responsibility of the bike that was stolen was to file a police report, of which I responded, I don't work with the police, it's against my religion. Of which the woman on the phone was very understanding and kind about and accepting. And she said, well, look, we have a 97% success rate of getting the bikes back when a police report is filed. So if you do change your mind, I will send you all of the information you need to file the report, and then you won't be liable for this missing city bike or stolen city bike. So I'm at the coffee shop this morning. The cops are really trying to get my attention in a kind of douchey man way. And I decide, you know what? I'm gonna ask them about how to file a police report. So I say, okay, excuse me, gentlemen, I actually have a question. And they engage with me and they're like, what's the question? I say, I need to file a police report. They say, oh, okay, well, what happened? I tell them what happened with City Bike, and they're kind of really chummy and funny, and they decide to tell me that cops are really lazy, so it's very unlikely that I will have success getting one of them to file it in front of me, which was really confusing language. And then there is clearly a cop that's around the corner who's the new guy on the team. So they say, you know, you're gonna have you're probably gonna have more luck getting him to do it, because like we said, cops are lazy and they don't want to file things, but you have a higher chance of getting this guy to do it. So the other guy comes back, and there's this weird game of communication in front of me. The cop that they suggested would help me comes up and he's like, did they put you up to this? And I said, no, I asked for help. I actually would really like to understand how to file a police report, because that's what the City Bike people told me to do, and I really respect City Bike as a company and as a service here in Miami, so I was thinking about actually filing a police report even though it's against my religion. Of which I say that, and then I pretty much invited it in, and the cops perked up and they're like, oh yeah, well, what do you do? What's your deal? And I said, I sell weed. Because every morning I show up to this coffee shop and I have a weed leaf tattooed on my chest, and I'm always in my workout clothes. So I feel as though the signal was already made that we're not on the same team. But, then the cops are like, oh, what do you mean? And I said, I have a company. I came from Los Angeles. California was a really great state to live in. I started my company there. The market's open here. So yeah, that's what I do. And the one cop is trying to help me, and he goes off to grab his little pen and paper and little system thing, and he's like, give me 1 second. I will help you get all the information. I'm gonna take all the information down, and then we're gonna open a report. And I'm like, thank you. But then the other cops poke at me more. And the one main cop who's being really aggressive towards me with his manliness and cop nature, he says, you know, I see you here every morning. You're always in business mode. You get in, you get out, you don't smile very much, you don't take my attention. You know, what's that about? And I said, well, I'm afraid of cops. I don't like cops. And he said, oh, okay, well, why is that? Of which I said, well, cops were very scary and treated me quite poorly. When I was a child, I was wrongfully accused of, I said, I basically was a case where there was a point in time when I was 16 or 17 years old where police and federal marshals thought that I looked like the girlfriend of a meth dealer. And so they apprehended me and my boyfriend at the time, and they thought that I was the girlfriend of a meth dealer. So they were very aggressive towards me. They were spitting, there was yelling. It was very scary, and it left a huge impression on me, the entire incident. On top of that, I have many other experiences from when I was 13 years old to today of cops treating me without kindness, profiling me, and just generally being poorly behaved. And all of them were like, damn. And they asked me, they said, did you get any money for what they did to you? And I said, no, I was a missing person. I didn't have a lot of rights at that time. So I was just scared. Afterwards, I just lived with the sheets on my windows for weeks. I just didn't want to come out of the house. I didn't want to use the phone. I found the experience to be like very jarring. Just a case of mistaken identity. So, and they all sort of broke their demeanor after I shared that story, and they started talking to me about why they voted. One guy started talking to me about why he voted no for weed to be legalized in California, and he started talking about how he thinks it's a gateway, and he didn't want to talk to his children about a gateway drug that could lead them down a path of immorality, basically. And I said, do you have any relationship to agriculture? Do you have a relationship to plants? And he said, no. I said, okay, well, I'm in love with the cannabis plant. It's actually a very indigenous, ancient organism. So I think that it would be quite easy to teach a child about a plant. And that is why I'm so passionate about this work. It's because of people like yourself who carry a stigma and a taboo way of thinking, and they imagine that a plant is a demon and that a plant is the reason why we have such a terrible culture surrounding addiction. It's not the problem, my friend. You're the problem. I didn't say that, but I thought it was an incredibly radical conversation. They definitely love me now. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I was on a walk back after the experience and they were hooting and hollering at me out of their little cop cars. And my dad was on the phone with me, and I had told him the experience and how fucking crazy it was. I told them that I sold weed. I sell hemp. We're all the same family. It's the cannabis family. And I'm a very large cannabis advocate with a lot of experience in the cannabis industry, so I feel comfortable. I just love also fucking throwing fire on someone, you know? Just being like, okay, cop, yeah. Bet you didn't see that coming. But basically, I figured I'll stop talking now because it's been 10 minutes, but I thought that was an important and unique conversation that if you had that conversation 20 or 30 years ago, you could be jailed for. So felt pretty powerful and radical, and I just thought I would share it because it was interesting to me. Signing off now. Bye.